Well, I was going to do partly an introduction, just in part because we're so excited to have John Hanson Mitchell, now known as Hanson Mitchell for the most recent book, but also because we're slightly testing our mini mic situation here. So, but y'all can hear me okay? Yes. Amazing. All right, so I'm Dorian, the Fowler Branch librarian here, and we're just really excited to hear from Hanson Mitchell's new book, The Sweet Revenge of Marcus Aurelius, based on the true story of a slave who sold his master. So, so thank you for being here. Thank you all for being here. And without further ado, it's all you.
Very good. Can you all hear? Yeah. Very good. Well, this project actually got started with this book, Looking for Mr. Gilbert, which is the story of, I discovered these glass plate negatives in the attic of the old Audubon Society, and it turned out they were, most of them were taken by William Brewster, who was head of the ornithology department at the Harvard Museum of MCZ, Museum of Zoology, and he had this assistant, African-American assistant named Mr. Gilbert, and working together, Gilbert learned to, he started doing development, and then he started taking photos on his own. He had a natural eye. I mean, he was, and if you go through, there were 2,000 plates. You go through, you could see which was Gilbert instantly. So anyway, I was digging out information on Gilbert at the Library of Congress, and mainly in the slave narratives, which that's the collection of interviews that WPA in the Roosevelt era established to put journalists to work, basically. And they interviewed living people who had been born enslaved, and it started, including the Civil War, but also in some old guys before the war. So while doing that research, I ran across maybe 3-4 paragraph description of a slave who sold his master. Well, that sounds a better story than a guy who went around taking pictures. But that was 2000, that was 20 years ago. And, I was working, and I had other books. But finally, about maybe 5-10 years ago, I got started on serious research. And the basic story, the nonfiction part, is that this man, his name was Mac, and it later changed to Marcus Aurelius. He was born around 1825, definitive date, on one of the Tidewater, Virginia plantations, probably around Yorktown. And somebody in his owner's family, either an individual, I'm pretty sure it must have been an individual, because this individual taught this boy, he's probably only 7 or 8 years old when he first came, to read and write. Totally illegal, according to Virginia law. And slaves to read and write, they might get ideas. Didn't want them, by the way, didn't want them to learn to swim either, because it made escape, you get in the water, you can escape the dogs. So it's illegal to teach a slave to swim. They did anyway. But so this guy, at some point, his family, and by this time he's probably a teenager, they took him to Paris for 3 years. And we don't know what the family was doing there was some business, and whoever taught him to read and write was with the family. And this is the Second Republic. This is Louis Napoleon. So France had abolished slavery at the time. So, he was technically free. And that brings up the biggest question in this book. Why on earth did he come back? Because he was free, but it's either because he was loyal to his people, or he had somebody he deeply associated with in the family. We don't know why he came back, but it was a big mistake. He was, he's very used to freedom. I mean, when he was 19 and 20, he'd sit in the cafes and served by white people. He couldn't do that anywhere in the United States, even in the North. And so he comes back to this horrible conditions of slavery, and I don't know whether he ran away or what happened. He could have been just out on the street someplace, and he was kidnapped by a hideous character named, well, they called him Black Jack. Black Jack Hubbard, James A. Hubbard. He was a notorious slave catcher, and he's described in the records as a brutal figure. He's very cruel, carried an iron cane, which he put to use on anybody who crossed him. And this man, he was not, in those days you had patrollers out on the roads trying to catch escaped slaves. You had people chasing runaways, specific people. This guy would just kidnap anybody, and he's like rounding up a wild animal. He put him in a pen in a big barn, and when he had enough slaves, he'd march them down to what's called down the river, that phrase, to New Orleans, to the slave market. Well, on the way, it looks like Hubbard, he's a poor boy. He's from the Five Points district in New York. And he recognized in this figure, this man, somebody he could learn something from. This man spoke, Marcus Aurelius. He spoke French. He had some Spanish. He's a very handsome man. That description comes through in all the records. He was handsome, light-skinned. He was a cocoa-colored, aquiline features, tall, and by the time he's back in America, very, very civilized. He did well in France. He met women, went to balls. He went to fencing school. He could play the violin. So Hubbard recognized that he's got somebody here who he can learn from. Because Hubbard he was practically illiterate, I think. And so he kept him as his valet, or a factotum, he kept accounts and all that. Well, they were in New Orleans. Well, New Orleans is a good place for a person of color, actually. There are a lot of free blacks in the streets. This is 1840s, roughly. The Creole society was a a lot of different racial identifications. But apart from the total, the actually enslaved people, it was an open city. And by this time, Mr. Marcus Aurelius, he saw his way out. He pretended to be totally loyal to Hubbard. He did everything he wanted, polite to him, obeyed him. He's scheming all the while. And so Hubbard let him get out in the streets. He could mix with people. He became popular in the faro halls and the taverns. He was a known figure, partly because he had such good carriage, and he spoke French, which was the language of the aristocracy back then in New Orleans. So one day in a tavern or a faro hall, he met a timber operator who was looking for a strong-backed slave. Hubbard was a big, strong guy. And Marcus Aurelius said, "Why, sir, I know just your man." And so those are the facts. After he sold Hubbard, he went back, relieved him of his silver and his dueling sword, kulaks, very good dueling sword, his pistols, probably a horse. We don't know what happened. He disappeared. He disappears from history. Hubbard did not disappear. He got free and got back to Virginia. And knowing Hubbard, he set out to catch and kill Mr. Marcus Aurelius. That's the kind of guy he was. So those are the facts. And I started this book as nonfiction. Too many holes. I mean, too many he would have, or he might have, or he did probably this. That's my agent, I had a literary agent. Why don't you do it as a novel? So that's how this got started. And what I'll do, I think, is I'll go through the book as I imagined it, and do a couple of readings and, talk a little more about the different areas. And I just want to really start off with just to set the stage, what this guy's up against. His first escape was 1845. These are notices that went out in flyers, newspapers, and posters, put all around cities, a town, and everywhere. And it's 1840, reward $50, fled Mayfield Plantation on June 7th. Marcus Aurelius, light complexion, 6 feet, last seen wearing tattered cutaway and field trousers. Subscriber, Johnston, that's Horace H. Johnston, that's Horace Johnston, he's the plantation owner. And then 1846, $75, fled Mayfield Plantation, Marcus Aurelius, September 3rd or 4th, maybe in the region around Mary Plantation, Charles City. Tall, light-skinned with distinctive green eyes. That was one of the problems he had as a free man. Believed to be carrying a forged pass, may feign ignorance of the English language. Subscriber Horace Johnson. September 1847, $90. Escaped Mayfield Plantation. This is his last escape. Charles City, Marcus Aurelius, light-skinned, tall, wearing upon escape his master's red waistcoat and striped flannel trousers. This man is skilled at disguises, including that of a supposed French nobleman, can be identified by his distinctive green eyes. Caution, may be armed with a Navy cutlass and 2 pistols. Horace Johnson, Mayfield. So that's the kind of thing he's up against, and when Hubbard sets out to catch him, which he did, he'd post these, wherever he was, he'd post these notices. So then, let's see. All these things say, do not attempt to, or they warn that trying to catch this guy is going to get you in trouble. I put in here a historical note. I say, according to the records, it should be added that there was nothing in the flyers, bulletins, bills, broadside, newspaper ads, and posters that followed this man's various escapes about the fact that Marcus Aurelius was deeply read in both French and English, that he was also fluent in Spanish and the Creole dialect, was a skilled duelist, a violinist in the devil's style, and an unusually handsome man to boot, with high cheekbones, slightly almond-shaped green eyes, a straight nose, and square chin. It was his hair and his cocoa-colored skin that gave him away, and that alone meant very little in the mixed-race culture of New Orleans, where he was last seen. Notes in the slave rolls of the 3 plantations where he was held indicated that, along with his smooth talk and his apparent good manners, Mac, a.k.a. Marcus Aurelius, was a scoundrel. That's the Southern term, contemporary Southern term for, a terrible liar, scandal, cheat, just a bad slave, a scoundrel. He was an inveterate liar, a constant runaway, and a man skilled at trickery and disguises. Extant documents also make clear that he was comfortable with whites, especially Europeans, and that he was affable, entertaining, and believed to be the lover of not a few women of French society, although that may be merely the gossip of those Americans in Paris who knew him. So here's the beginning of the book. Put the case that in 1862, After many travels and travails, having secured a fine estate in the countryside near Rambouillet, France, Count Marc Auré, soi-disant, self-described, retired to compose his memoirs. At the time, the good Count would content himself with walks through the countryside, evening musicales with his wife vieillissante, and periodic work on his letters. But in spite of his current circumstances, life for the Count was not always comfortable. For the first 25 years of his life, Count Marc, formerly known as Mac or Marcus Aurelius, had been held in bondage in the United States of America. Put the case further, that on a fine May morning in 1865 in Rambouillet, Count Marc found himself beside a small tributary that ran down to the east side of his holdings. Here he settled on a dry bank to watch the misty spears of sun break through the lacework of the vernal trees. Trout were feeding in the clear waters of the stream that day. The lilies of the valley were all abloom around him, and above, in the green bower of the tree canopy, he could hear the songs of the cuckoo, blackbird, and thrush. But sitting there, musing on the pleasures of his current situation, his reverie was rudely interrupted by the thunder of horse hoofs and the baying of hounds out on the Versailles highway. These were merely the foxhounds of his neighbor, and nothing to concern himself with. But one individual who has ever been held in bondage for any length of time can ever be truly free. What's past is present in certain hours of the night for such people, and the baying, coming as it did in the midst of a pleasant daydream in which linear time was suspended, propelled the Count back into darker days along the James River bottomlands of Tidewater, Virginia. He was on his feet in an instant that morning, and running before he was even fully awake. He snatched up a satchel of victuals, a stolen cutlass, and charged into the brush and raced toward the swampy tangle where he had hidden after a night of slow travel. 4 days earlier, Marcus Aurelius had executed a successful escape from Mayfield Plantation, and he was now headed for freedom, or so he believed. So he's living, this is before he's at Mayfield. He lived in another plantation called Greenwood. And there was living at Greenwood an 11-year-old, 12-year-old girl named Amanda, who was basically a tomboy, although a very literate, well-read tomboy. By the way, slaves and whites up until a certain age, 6 or 7, until a slave was able to work, they played together. The whites, they didn't know they were white or black, probably. You have to be taught. Anyway, she could throw stones at frogs in the ornamental pools, and she fought with sticks and clods with mud, and she could spit farther than any of them. And when she was about 10 or 11, the family went to France for the summer. That just sharpened her interest in literature and language, and she picked up French right away. And when they came back, her parents made an attempt to civilize her, and they got her a French tutor. She gave her violin lessons, and then the regular schooling. But really didn't hear. She's very interested in the theater, by the way. So at the height of her career in the theater and her studies, her life changed. She met Mac. Then first afternoon, Mac, he's led into the room by Amanda's mother, who was holding him by the hand. The little boy had curious green eyes for a black child. He said nothing when he was introduced to his new charge. So it was love at first sight. I mean, she just thought this is the cutest little kid she'd ever seen, and she knew a lot of little kids, And she took him under her wing, and she taught him well, she made a pet of the boy, you know. She'd take him everywhere, and they'd go out walking in the woods, and, you know, she taught him, she's the one who taught him to read and write. Never told anybody, because, you know, against the law. And one day they're out in one of their dog walks in the woodland along the western edge of the plantation, and she instructed Mac to break off a small straight branch from a tree. And then she went out and found another and instructed him to break that one off as well. Good, she said, now we are armed. There are said to be highwaymen riding through here. What are highwaymen? Mark asked. She explained, and then said she would teach him to defend himself in case of attack. She took up a stick, turned sideways to a tree trunk. There's one devil now, she shouted, and executed a fine lunge at the trunk. Mac watched, wide-eyed, while she acted out a duel against another tree, and then another. You see, she said, like that. If we ever encounter highwaymen on our walks, we must fight them off. You hear? Yes'm, he said, having absolutely no idea what she was talking about. But he liked the stick part. So, a lot of the influences in his life were women. Amanda was the first. I just want to read you this section. This has nothing to do with women, but on that last escape, he made it into the Great Dismal Swamp, which was, still is, a huge swamp on the Virginia-North Carolina border, and it was a major hideaway for escaped slaves. The whites they didn't often go in there. Nat Turner, you know, after his massacre, he hid there for 6 months. He was living in the Great Dismal Swamp. And Marcus got in there, and after it was not easy. I'm not looking for the part here. Here it is. So he's you know he got lost in the swamps, and then he can hear these dogs barking, and they're probably just hunting foxes or something. But anyway, he burst into a clearing, and there in the clearing, he stood the wildest congregation of human beings he had ever seen in his sheltered life. The people were mostly African, but there were also among them a company of copper-skinned Chikomini or Pamuke Indians, the local mostly decimated tribes. The people were dressed in motley, some in formal wear, breeches and culottes stolen from their masters, some in shredded field wear, and some, the Indians and a few blacks, in leggings and skirts of deerskin. They were also armed, some with ancient flintlocks, a few with swords, and some with spears and bows and arrows. They were as surprised to see young Marcus as he was to see them, and they drew back their spears and pointed their guns at him. But he raised his hands, and he fell to his knees, and they put down their weapons and approached. Was he a runaway, they wanted to know? Were the dogs they could hear after him? And what was the name of the plantation he belonged to? And on and on and on, with questions and requests for news of the outside world. So he is adopted by these people, and he spends the whole winter with them. Following that, before that actually, he was living at, as I said, Mayfield Plantation, and one day when he was about 17, I think, he's asked to deliver a cake to the kitchen down the river at the Mary Plantation. By the way, I should say that this is a fiction book, but you know, we don't know anything about these kind of details. But every single detail in this book is based on historical events or historical characters or places. Mayfield Plantation is I don't know whether you all know the James River plantation, but it's Berkeley Plantation. And right down the river, not far down the river, is Shirley Plantation. So he's asked to take this cake down to the Mary Plantation. And when he gets there, when he arrived, he saw a slim teenage girl outside the back door, dressed in Osnaburg cotton frock and a floppy slouch hat with the brim turned up in the front, another little aside. This Osnaburg cotton frock and all the clothes, the field clothes that the slaves wore, were woven by a New York company named Brooks Brothers. So anyway, he's down there. He sees she's a really cute girl, and he says, "This is the back door to the big house?" he asked, knowing full well that it was. "Well, it ain't the front door," the girl says. "Big house kitchen has no front door, missy, and you know that. What's your name?" "Tilly." "Tilly?" he asked. "Tilly?" "Yeah, that's right, Tilly. Tilly tarry till the sun goes down." "What you talking about, boy? Well, what's in that box?" "I brought you a cake." Tilly put her hands on her hips and looked at him sideways, smirking and nodding her head. It was a cynical, knowing look that she had learned from older women, half rejection, half flirtation. He loved it. "If that cake be for me, open the box, I share it with you," Tilly said. "You take the first bite, I take the second." She had outfoxed him. He admitted that it was for the master's wife from Mistress Johnston. And after another short exchange, Marcus said he had to go back, and they said goodbye. Tilly delivered the cake to the mistress, and then when she came back, Marcus was still there. "What you linger around here for? I thought you had to get back," Tilly said. "Oh, I can't remember how to get there." Hands on her hips again, the knowing nod, only this time she was smiling. 2 nights later, he came back. Then he showed up a week later. And then after that, there were more night visits. So Tilly is a major, Amanda too, actually, she reappears at the end of the story. But Tilly is a major player in this book because, well, after he vows, this final escape from Mayfield, he's determined to get out, and that means leaving Tilly. But he promises, he vows to come back, and she says she'll wait for him. Anyway, so then off to France. He was bought by a Quaker man named Mr. Coffin, who's also a major player here. And Mr. Coffin had a mixed career. His father started as a trader in Connecticut.
Is he a real person?
I'm sorry?
Is he a real person?
Mr. Coffin?
Yeah.
It's a real name. Yes, I know it. He's a Quaker, and a lot of coffins in Nantucket coffins. Anyway, Mr. Coffin, as did Quakers, they're the biggest, they're the main players in the abolition movement. They were also sharp businessmen, and they were willing to turn a blind eye to slavery when it would get you some money. And that's what happened with Mr. Coffin. Caleb was his first name. Business. His father, he had business in Haiti, and he's delivering food to feed the slaves. And Caleb, his son, was very uncomfortable with this, and he got involved with a Haitian woman. It's a long story, and anyway, he kind of made a total switch. And he was, in his own quiet way, an abolitionist, except he did it one at a time. He would buy a person, train the person to read and write, get him off on a career, and set him free. And that's what happened with Marcus. He bought Marcus. He continued his education. He took him, Coffin had office in Paris. He took him to Paris, back to Paris. And that's when he was there for the 3 years, and he did very well. He had a lot of girlfriends, and one of them was this young woman named Bettina, and she was a music student at the Paris Opera, and she's a very imaginative girl. She's always writing theaters and librettos, and she has this libretto. Oh, they're out in Saint Cloud, and they're out in the fields beyond her family's rich. They had a house up there. And they're just lying in the fields looking up at the sky, and these cumulus clouds are sweeping by like sailing ships. And she says she's got a new libretto she's working on. And it's the Barbary Pirates. And she is but a white slave girl captured earlier, and Marcus will be the son of the Pasha. But they fall in love, and so they decide to run away, and they run away, and they get on a French ship, and then they go raiding other ships, and then they do this, and then they catch others, and they get very rich, and they retire to Cornwall to lead a quiet life. And very nice, Marcus said. Very good story. He lay back on the grassy glade and stared dreamily upward at the passing clouds for a while, and he sat up abruptly. I'll say, I've got another plot for your opera. What? She asked. Well, the first part is perfect, he said, but the end is different. We do run off, taking most of my father's wealth. Then we hire a French brig, and we assemble a loyal crew of pirates and buccaneers, and we sail west to the United States. En route, we encounter an American slave ship. We attack, free the slaves, put our first mate as captain on the slave ship with the former slaves as crew, and then throw the crew overboard, the white crew, along with the captain. Then we come across another slave ship. This too we attack, free the slaves, and throw the crew overboard. Then we catch another, and then, having armed the crews, we have an armada of 3 ships, and we sail on and land in Florida. We continue, and then with our renegade army, we sail northward, attacking cotton and indigo plantations and freeing their slaves too, who join our army. We continue northward, gaining recruits all along the way until we come to Virginia and the big river there, the James River. And we sail up the river and we free all the local slaves from the plantations, land our army of renegades, and march on to Richmond, a big city on the river. The government of the United States sends the military to stop us, but the soldiers are from the north, and they rebel. They don't like the institution of slavery any more than we do, so they switch camps and join us. And by that time, their king, the president of the United States, albeit reluctantly, decides to abolish slavery. In exchange for our leadership, we are given one of the big James River plantations, and we start a university there to educate the former slaves. Only then can we live happily. Only then can we be free and rest. So that's his dream. By the way, he gets in a lot of trouble for his relationship with Bettina, because she's got another guy that she's seeing, a very rich and a very skilled fencer, very rich nobleman, a totally decadent guy. And he gets word of this affair and challenges Marcus to a duel. Well, Bettina doesn't want him to do it because this guy is one of the most skilled fencers in Paris. But Marcus, too, is skilled fencer, starting with Amanda's lessons, and then he went to fencing school. And there's a long, drawn-out scene here of the duel between the two of them, and Marcus bests the nobleman, which puts the nobleman to shame. He has to leave Paris. So Tilly runs through this story, and she's got her. She's another Amanda and another Marcus rolled into one. She's a naughty girl, very naughty. Mistress loves her, but that's because she overlooks her sins. She spits in stews. She sweeps the floor and put it in the stew. She feeds. breaks dishes and blames the dog. I mean, she's just a very bad bot. She's very pretty. And you know, as it often happened with a pretty house slave, the men come for try to rape her. They don't get away with it. There's one guy, he's a drunk, one of the son of the owner, he's a drunk guy. He comes home and he's so drunk he can't do much, but he's after her. She knocks him with a poker, you know. And he's so drunk he can't really remember. And her father comes after her. No, her father. I mean, not her father. The father of the kid who was after her. Anyway, she outwits them all, but eventually she just got to run away. And so she does. She gets out and she's headed north. People take her in, and what they call safe houses, you know. And she comes to a big plantation. She's not sure. People tell her to go, have told her to go there, but when she gets there, they're not sure because it looks like a regular plantation with slaves in the fields and everything. Well, they are African American people, but they're not enslaved. It's a very religious family, and they take in runaways. And what they do is they work. You know, they have to work on the fields and the farm. But they live with the people, and anytime they want to get away, move north, they'll help. And in this case, well, there's a son. They have a son, Jackie, who's a little slow. He's one of these kids, you know, not too can barely read, but he's really comfortable in nature, and he talks nonstop. He's very religious, but you know, he's a good kid. So Tilly's got to get up. She wants to get up to a town, Waterford, in Northern Virginia, which is a slave. This too is a true place and a true fact. Run by Quakers, and if you can get to blacks could get to Waterford, the people would protect them. So Tilly's sister, that she thinks is in Waterford, and she's trying to get there. And it's not too far from this farm, so the family says the son's name is Jackie, and they tell Jackie to take her up to Waterford, and they get along. They're the same age, and they drive along singing. You know, they both know, you know, hymns and stuff like that. And but at one point, though, they're set upon by slave catchers. And they try to drag Tilly out of the wagon, and there's a serious melee. I mean, the dog. Jackie's got a dog, a loyal dog, and he joins Skippy, and he joins in the fight. And I mean, it's just a disaster. But in the end, they kill both of them, and they don't really mean to. I mean, they're just trying to defend themselves, but they kill them. And so now they got to get on the road again, and they start off, and then Jackie says, "Wait a minute, we can't just leave them there. We got to drag them off." So they go back, and they drag the people back in the woods, and they start off again, and then he realizes we got to take the horses. And then he takes the gun, and they take them all, and they get in, and they start off from the wagon, and then Jackie stopped again and shrugged. He said, he says, we might as well take the horses, and they string the horses by, and then they ride on, and then a mile or so down the road, he slows and stops again, and what are you doing, Jackie? Let's go, Tilly says. She's terrified. She's killed a white man. If she ever gets caught, that's it for her, no trial. She says, come on, let's go. He said, we got to pray, Tilly. We have to pray for forgiveness. We don't got time to pray, Jackie. We pray later. Let's go. Don't tell my pa we did that, Tilly. Don't tell anybody. But I'm not going to hell for that, and neither are you, because we did that in self-defense, didn't we? And it say in the Bible, if thine enemy assault thee, defense is all right, or something like that, I think. So we're not going to hell. He paused. I don't think. He stared at the surrounding woods, blankly thinking. And then he said, we got to pray for forgiveness, nodding with his decision. And he got down from the wagon and knelt beside the road and began to pray out loud. Father, forgive us, for we know not what we do, he began. We are but lowly sinners, Lord, but the agents of the devil did set upon us, Lord, and they sought to kill us and take away thy dark-skinned daughter into bondage. We acted only in our own self-defense. Forgive us our sins, O Lord, but we fought them in self-defense, and we were victorious. Thank you, Jesus. We were victorious in our defense. But they were evil men, agents of the devil, but bless them too, O Lord, and forgive them their trespasses. He rambled on in a long stream of never-ending prayer, till he sat in the wagon looking back and forth on the road. And she called back to Jackie, that's good, Jackie. The Lord said, that's good, Jackie, let's go. Jackie looked back at her. I got more to say. No, Jackie, no, I was praying too here in the wagon, and the Lord done speak unto me. And he said, go forth, my son and daughter, onto the road. Go down to Egypt land and freedom. Forgiveness be all, he said. So let's go. He spoke to you? Yes, sir, Jackie, he did. He did indeed. He said, thou art my daughter, and you and that boy are forgiven. He tell me to get you back in the wagon here and get on the road to freedom. That's what he said, Jackie. And I believe him. Praise the Lord. Jackie rose up from his knees, thought a minute, and then they got it back and proceeded on their way. And later in the day, they reached Waterford. Well, there's another section. How's the time? We got time enough? Anyway, I don't want to bore you. Anyway, New Orleans. I don't think I'll read you what happens. The sale. Yes.
How many years did you work on plot and on all these characters and getting them to articulate so beautifully what the story?
Well, that's actually the easy part. It was the research.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, as I said, this is all based on events. I just put Marcus in this nonfiction background, you know, of between 1840 1850. So, yeah, it's all real, including this scene in New Orleans where he, as I say, well, you all know that he gets sold, all right? So I might as well tell you about the sale. And this guy, he's another real character, by the way, a timber salesman, a timber operator. His name is Henry Davis in this book. And he's got this big plant, it's a timber operation up north of the city, and he's got a whole bunch of slaves up there, and it's very isolated. He's in the woods, and people don't run away because they're afraid of the woods. There's something called the Mothman who lives in the woods. And what's that? And Marcus wanted to know, and he said, Davis, he says it's kind of a white spirit, looks like a huge moth with wide wings, and it folds you up and then eats you. Slowly, though. It takes a week or two to kill you. Well, that's what the people who are living up there believe, so they don't want to go out in the woods. Anyway, he's looking for a strong field hand, and Marcus was intrigued by these stories, and he says, "Are you going to be around here for a few days?" And Davis says, "Yes, he is." Well, maybe we can meet, as Marcus. Maybe we could meet again. I myself own a bad slave like that, and I'm not sure I want him anymore. Too much trouble. 2 days later, they met again and shared a glass or two of absinthe. Well, what about that book you own? I haven't seen too many types that would do for this kind of work I need. Everybody's too clean. Well, this is Marcus, says, he's still around. I actually kind of let him loose. He works on his own terms, and I let him out. But he always gets drunk and comes crawling back, and I always know where he is. He sounds just right, Davis said. Yes, but I have to warn you, he's a tough one. When he's out on the streets, he carries a cane made of iron. Nobody fights him when they see that cane. I heard that he nearly killed another black man 2 weeks ago. Sounds good to me, Davis said. There's one other thing, though, Marcus said, was that he thinks he's white. Davis whacked his glass down on the table and started to laugh. I like that. Crazy. That guy crazy. And he said, well, he's violent, all right. And the thing is, though, he actually looks white. He's light skinned, but he's got that black curly hair, jet black eyes. Might be part Indian. He's a big fella, rough looking. I bought him off a plantation back in Virginia and at a very good price. I thought I could use him for protection in my travels, but it hasn't worked out. I'll sell him to you for a good price. How much? $700 maybe? I don't know. I didn't think about selling him until you came along. Tell you the truth, I just soon get rid of him, but I thought I'd have a little trouble selling him at auction. He's such a nasty type. A few more questions, and then he said, look, he offers to buy him. And Marcus said, fine with me, but I feel it's only fair to warn you. What now? Davis asked. He's going to fight you. He's going to fight like a wildcat. That fight like a wildcat is a term that appears in the actual records, nonfiction records of this man. He's going to fight like a wildcat. He's going to start shouting about the fact that he's white. He even sometimes claims to be a traitor. I mean, I do think he's crazy. You have to know that he does not know reality. You've got to slap him in irons. That's another phrase from the original document. You're going to slap him in irons right away. Knock him on the head if you have to, and muzzle him so he can't talk crazy, and haul him off to your pen. He can take it. Doesn't matter, Davis said. You should see the types we have up there in the woods. Half of them are crazy. So, yes?
So in your research, Mothman, is that something that came up, or is that just your invention?
No, there's a Mothman. In fact, there's a Mothman around here in the, what's that famous swamp south of here where the King Philip's War, near Middleborough. There's a Mothman in there. You don't want to go in there. He'll get you. I got other things, but...
It's probably good to do the Q&A now.
Yeah, why not? Yeah. Yeah.
John, how many years did you work on this?
What?
How many years did you work on
Oh, okay. The question is how many years? Really a long time, 7 years, off and on. But see, we started, when I learned of it, it was 20 years ago. And I don't know, I mean, I have a research assistant in both these books, Joe Brown. I don't know whether you know. So both of us, combing the Library of Congress, which he appears in the Library of Congress, Virginia Historical Society records, a couple of other Virginia plantations. There's a very good plantation called Oatlands. It's in Leesburg, Virginia, and they have records of their slaves, so you get a lot of details from that. I put Oatlands in the book. Oatlands, it was on the slave route. The Coffles went through there, it's right outside Leesburg. Yeah.
Did you go to all these plantations and all these cities?
Did I go around?
Cities and plantations, have you gone there in your research?
I'm sorry, which city?
Did you go physically to the plantations and to the locations?
Yeah, we went to several around. The best one, the most informative one, is Whitney Plantation outside of New Orleans. And we have the date, we have the record of the address of Mr. Hubbard. Grove Street, we knew the house, 54 Grove Street. The thing is, nowhere in the, slave sales in and out of New Orleans markets, they were very well documented. And we couldn't find anybody named Marcus Aurelius or Mac. However, so that's a great mystery. However, then, he never was sold. He was just kept. So there's no record of him. But there's a mystery because there's a slave out at Whitney Plantation. The Vietnam War Memorial, what's her name, it has all the names. Well, Whitney Plantation, after years of research, it's all about the slaves, Whitney Plantation. It's not about the white plantation owners, very little. Where was it? Oh, so there on that thing is a slave named Mac, born Virginia, 1825. It doesn't quite fit because I don't know, maybe Hubbard put him out there for a while or something, I don't know. But anyway, so he was there, definitely, yeah.
John, how did you decide?
How, what?
How did you decide to put the two words, sweet and revenge, together in the title?
Well, revenge is sweet.
Yeah.
Although there's another term, revenge is a dish best cold. But this guy never let go. I mean, it's really all Amanda or whoever it was in this original plantation owners, whoever it was that set him in motion. She probably was a girl. I can't imagine. I mean, the type of rebellious kids that come along, but she was a literate person. She did definitely instill in him, or somebody did, a desire for freedom. And in the book, Amanda, she encourages him to escape, and he comes back to get Tilly, and that's a long part of the book. His adventures stealing Tilly. He's living in disguise in Richmond, but Hubbard's there too. He ends up in the same town, and they come very close. One thing in the book, he's gotten Tilly free, but he's got these green eyes, so it's a problem because people begin to recognize him. So he's got Tilly with him by this time. He pretends to be a blind man. He gets these dark glasses and a stick, and Tilly, his slave, Tilly leads him around, and at one point, they pass Hubbard. And he says, sotto voce, don't look at this guy, And Hubbard stops and turns, he suspects something. But anyway, yes?
So I really appreciated how rich your descriptions were of Paris and New Orleans at that time.
Yeah.
And again, I assume you did a lot of research, or you were there.
Well, we were there, and we were in Paris too, but he was up in, I don't know why, I think Rambouillet, except that a lot of some people, colonials, went up there in the Second Republic. It's a sort of a commercial, or it was a trading town just north. It's near Versailles. And so we look around, but also we spent a lot of time in Paris looking for this guy. Because he was in Paris for, we don't know how long, but he was. But the most fun was New Orleans. I mean, how many have been to New Orleans? It's a great city. I mean, it's still a lively city. Congo Square, where they used to have these big dances in Congo Square. I mean, slaves too could come to this every Sunday afternoon, and the people, they live in history. I mean, the people, the researchers and the museums and everything. I mean, it's such a rich background. So, yeah.
I was just wondering if looking for Mr. Gilbert has some of these characters' beginnings, and this is a companion book.
Is it what?
It's looking for Mr. Gilbert, the first book, and then
Yeah.
Revenge is the second.
Yeah. The first book was where we discovered this story. We were going through the slave narratives. Well, it occurs in several places, but the first reference was in the slave narratives, and then it was, you know, McClure's magazine. Do you know that? That's historic muckraking magazine around 1900. His story is in there. And then there was some other earlier records. His story is there in 1905. The story of this guy who sold his master, and but there was an earlier record. I can't remember where. Well, then he turns up here and there throughout, and you know he's mentioned. He's in the Library of Congress. Of course, a lot of the references are from me, but anyway. Yeah.
Thank you so much. This is so engaging.
Good.
I want to know, are you still looking for him?
If it comes to pass, yes. I mean, because you know something, things are turning up constantly in our time. Yes. I mean,
all of us looking for him.
yeah, go out there and search. I mean, it would be basically around Virginia and New Orleans that the empty space is really Paris. That's, you know, I mean, I know a lot about the Paris was if you were what they call colonial, you know, slavery is abolished in France, but not in the colonies. But if the people, you know, African people, Haitian, got over into France, they educate them. They had schools. They had schools for colonials, and they were really good schools. Now, sometimes white people would send their kids there. So that kind of deep research into the history of black people in Paris, he comes and goes. You know, I mean, Napoleon. He backed the Haitian Revolution, and then he changed his mind and sent down their armies and fought against the Haitian people. Yeah.
How religious were the people, his associates, Marcus's associates and people around him? The reason I ask is that there's a novel very similar to yours called The Story of Daniel Williams, written by Peter Freuchen, Danish writer, and he was going to write this as a nonfiction, but he didn't have enough material. It's about a slave who, just before the Civil War, left the South, couldn't tolerate being a slave anymore, ended up in the subarctic of Canada, and was a preacher. So he's talking to essentially pagan indigenous people, and he's converting them, so this fellow Daniel Williams is, to Christianity because he's such an avid Christian.
What years of that?
Well, it's from the late 1850s is when it's set.
Yeah. See, you know, after, at the time of the American Revolution, you may know this fact, but the British would come to pass through plantation. They say let the slaves know, you join us, you're free. Well, I had known this fact. I didn't know how many. There were like 60,000 people left their plantation. And the whole abolition movement, starting in England, you know, was driven by religious people. And after the revolution, the free blacks didn't do very well, but they were religious. They were trained by Presbyterians, not Catholic, Presbyterian type churches, and they even had a village, two villages in New Brunswick. So, but that would have been like 1800. But the abolitionist movement in this country and England was driven by religion, and so you know you're going to have, and the slaves themselves were very religious. They still, you know, so yeah, that makes sense. Whoever he was. What year did you say? What year was he up there?
This is based on a character whose actual name was Daniel Williams.
Yeah.
And presumably up in the Canadian subarctic in the late 1850s, maybe early 1850s.
Yeah, but that's,
And was passionately Christian.
yeah,
And became something akin to a clergyman.
yeah,
And so in a way, in the novel, I wouldn't say he comes off as the villain, but he is essentially, by his preaching, wrecking the local culture.
yeah, well, that figures.
Was there something in your research that really surprised you?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, one of the things, well, this is not the research for this book, but the fact that 60,000 people, I mean, I thought there was maybe, 40 here, 50 there. But that's a huge body of, and a real hardship. I'm trying to think of, I guess there's nothing, maybe I'm too old, there's nothing surprising. But really interesting. I mean, like, I didn't know about these colonial schools, And also learn, there's a quote from Skippy Gates about this book. Oh yeah, here it is. No, wait a minute. No, I thought he had said in here, he seemed very praising. I thought he said the story of yet another invisible story or something, the truth about yet another. I mean, the fact of these talented black people who have, contributed to history. There's a guy, some famous heart discovery back in the 20s. It was actually made by the black assistant of the doctor. I mean, they're just one fact like that after another coming up now that people are doing serious African American history. By the way, this book was described by, I think, some editor as a riddle, what do you call it when you search for? Anyway, because these are all historical facts. There are two women in Richmond. One is she was a spy. She's just a society woman in Richmond. She was an abolitionist, and she had a half sister who she freed. And they would pretend that she's the slave, and they go and get gossip and then feed it to others. And so they're real people. Anybody who knows African American history will recognize them. They'll recognize Mr. Coffin too. It's all real. It's just not real. It's not that Marcus wasn't there. So anyway, thank you very much. Okay. Oh, I have